Hey up everyone, welcome back to the Rugby League History channel. I hope you're all well on this Wednesday. Tonight's video is going to be about the North Sydney Bears and the Central Coast. Last night Nick from Australia did a video about the Central Coast and how they need a team, and I agree with that, and I've always been passionate about North Sydney, about the Central Coast, and I agree with him 100%, but I've been thinking about doing a video on this for a while, going back over the history of North Sydney and their field move to the Central Coast, and maybe I'm going to tell you some things that you might not know, and maybe you can get a better understanding of the situation. But I'm going to bring you that video very shortly. For that though, I'm currently at 580 subscribers, looking to get to 600 by the end of January. My original goal was to get to 500 subscribers by the end of January, so I totally smashed that. I'm 80 in front of me total, and if you have not yet subscribed, please consider subscribing. I do videos pretty much every day of the week, so go back through my other videos, and if you enjoyed those, then consider subscribing. Thank you to everyone that's recently subscribed to my channel, and thanks to everyone that supported me from the very beginning. Getting back in North Sydney Bears and the Central Coast. So in the mid-1990s, around about 1994, there'd already been plans in place to reduce the number of clubs, especially in Sydney. They'd tried previously the New South Wales Rugby League in 1983. They managed to have to. They got shot of Newtown, but Western Suburbs fought back and they were reinstated. I think Cronulla were also another club that was mentioned about getting killed off, but they succeeded with Newtown. But in the mid-90s, with the Super League war and all this uncertainty, I think North Sydney could see the writing on the wall pretty early on. So I think they were one of the first sides that actually put their hand up and said, yeah, we're willing to relocate, we're willing to do anything to survive. And there was talks in the mid-90s, and I think it was around about 1996 that it was set in stone that North Sydney were going to relocate to the Central Coast and be renamed as the Central Coast Bears, and occasionally play a couple of games at North Sydney Oval, but they were going to be based at the Central Coast. And then the Super League war did happen. North Sydney stayed loyal to the NRL. There was offers to go to Super League. I'm a part of the North Sydney Bears Den page on Facebook, and I think a lot of us have agreed that if North Sydney would have gone to the Super League, there'd still be a club in the NRL today. But anyway, they stayed loyal to the NRL. All the players in the North Sydney side signed for the NRL. And then in 1998, there'd already been talks about North Sydney Oval not being up to the standards of first grade rugby league. And in 1998, they were basically told by what was then the beginning of the NRL that, look, your ground's not up to standard. So plans were already in place to build a stadium up at Graham Park, which was the land which is now the Central Coast Stadium. So North Sydney, pretty much by the end of 1998, were going to say goodbye to North Sydney Oval. They were told that the ground wasn't up to standard. And then in 1999, a lot of things went against North Sydney, and a lot of them were all bad. So to begin with, I think it was the worst rain on record. So it just rained on the Central Coast, and it delayed the construction of the stadium. There was a section of the stadium that had to be completely torn down and rebuilt again. And there were some other issues. There was some strikes with the builders and all that keeper. As a result, North Sydney had to pretty much spend, I think, the first half of 1999 playing on the road. They played at Lang Park. They had home matches at Parramatta Stadium. They had home matches at Stadium Australia, which used to be Telstra and ANZ Stadium. I think they also had a home game at the SFS. So their crowds were very low. They were also sponsored by this company called BBX that wasn't actually pumping any money into the club, and they were only offering sort of goods and services. So pretty much they were not helping as a sponsor. And then pretty much what happened is that players weren't getting paid. Also, Peter Louis, that was the coach from 1992, he stepped down in 1999 halfway through the year, so the club was hovering towards the bottom of the ladder there. And then, so they had low crowds, they had low sponsorship, and then also at the same time, the NRL criteria come out. Now, I think the NRL criteria is a load of bollocks, and I think some people that didn't have clubs that were killed or merged can agree with me on that one. If you want to do your own research on the NRL criteria, you can go ahead, but it's a load of bollocks because there was a criteria set because they needed to cut the number of teams from 22 down to 14. And if you look at North Sydney, even though they made 4 preliminary finals, they had some of the highest crowds out of all the Sydney clubs, and they had some other good things going for them. They finished third last in the criteria. And then Manly, who had won 3 minor premierships in a row, won a premiership in 96, had some really good crowds, had some other things going for them as well. They only finished 11th behind some other clubs like, I'm a Parramatta fan, but they finished way behind Parramatta. We hadn't made the final since 1987, and we had some pretty low crowds when we were going through a shite time. So I don't know where they come up with this criteria, but that's how it went. So at the end of 1999, with all that coupled, because North Sydney was supposed to be moving to the Central Coast Stadium at the beginning of 2000. Graham Murray was supposed to be the new head coach. He went on to coach Eastern Suburbs to a grand final in 2000. I bet you a lot of North Sydney fans are probably thinking, what if with that? And as a result, South Sydney were already told that they weren't going to make it for the 2000 season. They didn't meet the criteria. And North Sydney were the other club that were told that they weren't going to meet the criteria either. As a result, North Sydney had to merge basically with Manly to survive in some form of first grade. Manly were a little bit better off than North Sydney. They had a bit more money. The problem with North Sydney is that they basically went broke waiting for their stadium to open. They were $4 million Australian dollars in debt. They had $2 million that were owed to players. A lot of players hadn't been paid. A lot of players had actually, the year before, sold their houses in Sydney to fully move up to the Central Coast. So it was just a really, really awful year for North Sydney. It came at a really bad time with the criteria. And as a result, the NRL was offering between 7 and 8 million Australian dollars for clubs to merge. Manly just saw it as an opportunity to get some money. So they merged with North Sydney to form the Northern Eagles. And they were going to be based at the Central Coast. But I think that they were the Northern Eagles in name only. It was pretty much Manly. It was a Manly coach. It was a Manly board. It was basically a Manly playing group. I think only 7 North Sydney players were kept on to be part of that. I think it was 25 to 30 man squad. And then by the end of, I think it was 2001, the Northern Eagles were playing all their own matches back at Brookvale Oval there. And then what happened is that at the end of 2002, Manly basically went to the NRL and said, look, we've got the money, we've got the $8 million that were given to us, we've still got that. We want to go back to being Manly, North Sydney's and Solvent. So as a result, Manly went back to first grade in 2003, and North Sydney ever since have been out of the NRL in any form. And I go to a lot of New South Wales Cup games when I lived in Australia, and you go to the game, and I mean, it was good to see North Sydney still exist in some form, and they're at North Sydney Oval, and you get to see them play, and you get to hear the team song and all that keeper. But comparing it to what it was before when they're in the NRL, it's shite. It's a really hollow feeling if you can remember back that far. So with the Central Coast, North Sydney put a lot of effort into going to the Central Coast to move up there. I think there's some people on the North Sydney Facebook page that still have hats and rulers and school bags and stuff, because the North Sydney players used to go up there and do school clinics, I think in the mid to late 1990s, to let people know that they were moving up there, and they were fully committed to moving up there, whereas compared to Manly, when they merged with North Sydney, they were more just concerned with the money and then eventually going back to Manly. They had no interest in the Central Coast whatsoever. So anyway, you had the stadium just sat there with nobody playing in it. And in 2006, North Sydney was one of the bidders for the next NRL team, the Central Coast Bears, along with the Gold Coast. Now at that stage, the Gold Coast had no nickname, they had no home ground, they had no training facility, they had now. It was basically just, we're the Gold Coast and we want to be there. That's all they had. Whereas North Sydney, Central Coast, they had a head coach that was going to be David Fairley. They had the stadium which they built. They had 8,000 paying members, even though they didn't have club, yet they had more members than the Gold Coast have currently. They had John Singleton was also back in the club. They got the Leagues Club over the back. You got the railway station there, and for some reason, the Gold Coast beat the Central Coast Bears and the Wellington Orcas to the bid to be the next team. And we've seen how they've gone over the last 13 years, and I think it's just a case of what if. I mean, so pretty much when you look at the Central Coast Stadium up there, and I've been there, I got family on the Central Coast, my parents live on the Central Coast. When I used to go there, if we were driving past, I used to go, it's kind of like North Sydney built a house, but they're not allowed to live in it. That's how I see the Central Coast Stadium. It's like you've built a house and you're not allowed to live in it. And I think another thing that I forgot to mention earlier is that the NRL said to North Sydney in the late 90s that North Sydney Oval wasn't up to NRL standards, that they couldn't play there. They had to relocate, they had to move. They were given all this pie in the sky talk. And then at the end of the day, they were sold out not only by the NRL, but by the Leagues Club. The Leagues Club stopped putting money in the club. Ray Beattie and Saunders, I think his name was Bob Saunders, they pretty much sold out the club to Manly, and they were all for the major, and they took their money and they run. But it's when you look at North Sydney now, I mean, they pretty much got railroaded by the NRL, and they did a lot of hard work to go to the Central Coast, and it just come to nothing. Another thing with North Sydney as well, as I just mentioned earlier, sorry I trailed off. So they were told that their ground was not up to standard, but in 2005, South Sydney had a home game there, and Manly had a home game there. So is it not up to standard for North Sydney, but it's up to standard for those two clubs? And I think in 2005, 2006, South Sydney were very close to actually relocating full time to North Sydney Oval, and the NRL rubber stamped that. And then just last year, before this whole COVID-19 pandemic happened, Eastern Suburbs were going to host a home match at North Sydney Oval. Now you can see the NRL affiliate to North Sydney now. North Sydney is basically a feeder club to Eastern Suburbs. So it just kind of seems like it's one rule for North Sydney and one rule for everyone else. But with the Central Coast, the area itself, they're rugby league mad up there. They're crazy about rugby league. I've been there, as I said just earlier. Everyone loves rugby league up there. Everyone's got a team. There's some rugby league YouTubers like Entertain House and RXYSV2, and I think a couple of others that live on the Central Coast. Now, can you imagine if the Central Coast got admitted, or they relocated successfully in the 2000? They could have been Central Coast fans. Who knows? Maybe they would have continued to go for Parramatta, or maybe they would have gone for the Central Coast. Also, you've got a lot of teams up there. You've got a good junior league up there, and there's a lot of NRL players that are in the NRL currently that have come out of the Central Coast region. And I think probably one of the most famous ones I can think of just off the top of my head is James Maloney. And I remember, I think I was reading an interview about James Maloney, and he actually come out and said that because there was no Central Coast NRL team, he had to basically leave the Central Coast and go to Sydney to find a club to play for. But I can tell you that I think if James Maloney had the option to go to the Central Coast, he would have gone to the Central Coast. So that's basically my video about the North Sydney Bears and the Central Coast Bears, and the history behind all that. And I hope that you learned something tonight. Maybe you learned something that you didn't know about North Sydney or the Central Coast or the stadium, and why the stadium was built and why nobody plays there. And also, I'm pretty sure that maybe some North Sydney Central Coast people will watch this video. If I've said anything that's wrong, or you might want to correct me on something, then please feel free to do so in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. I'm Rugby League History. I'm getting out of here, and I'll catch us all later in the next video. Alright, thanks for watching. Ta-ra.